Hi, I'm Matt Hines here on DevOps TV for DevOps.com at the Does 16 conference. We're joined by CIO and author Mark Schwartz. Mark is the author of The Art of Business Value, which I'm told is a big hit. All your books flew off the table here in one day, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's a good sign, right? If it was upstairs collecting dust, like we said, probably
that would be a different book
not
entirely.
as indicative of what it's talking about. So clearly, yeah, again, the art of business value, the ultimate kind of arbiter of success in terms of whether or not DevOps is working, which is what we're here talking about this week, right? What are you seeing? First, tell me a little bit about the book.
Sure. You just said it yourself. This is the arbiter of success. So you would think that business value would be a topic that people would be talking about all the time, right? This is really the core of what we're doing. We don't know if we're really being successful unless we're measuring business value. And what I realized is it's just not a subject of discussion. It's one of those things where maybe people think it's obvious and they don't really need to talk about it, or maybe they think, well, we're the IT people and somebody on the business side is going to deal with business value or something like that. So I have an MBA from Wharton. I've been a CIO, a CEO. I have experience with all different types of companies, small ones, large ones. And it's not obvious to me what we mean by business value, the arbiter of success, as you say. And I thought, if it's not obvious to me, maybe it's not actually obvious to a lot of other people. So the book first spends a little bit of time knocking down conventional views of what business value might be. So is business value the same thing as customer value? Is it the same thing as user value? Is it ROI? Is it some other financial metric? And it turns out that none of those does a really good job, I think, of explaining what we mean by business value and what we should, more importantly, how we should be orienting our practice. What should we be doing as IT professionals? And then I try to build a case for an explanation of what business value is, how it should be used, and what the implications are really for agile practice, how it changes things.
So you make some great points in there, right? And we talk, the metrics for success in this space have been largely related to velocity, right? How quickly are you releasing? What's your mean time to repair? Those are the kind of things that we've traditionally talked about. At the end of the day, of course, it's all about customer experience. But as you highlight, customer experience isn't necessarily business value, right? People can have a great customer experience, but if it's not showing up at your bottom line, right, what does that mean? So
you've got it, yeah.
So what's the metric? How do you is it Net Promoter Score? I mean, how do you understand the outcome here?
Well, I hope people will read my book and learn.
You can give away some of the secrets, hopefully. Right?
A little bit of the secrets,
okay,
I can
sure.
tell you.
Thank you.
Well, customer value, I think maybe the way you put it, it does sort of indicate what the issues are, I think, with customer value. You can be delivering tons of customer value. Your customers might value something, but is it in the interest of your company for you to provide that to the customers? Well, it depends, for example, on how much it's going to cost you to provide.
Sure.
It depends on whether it's consistent with your brand, for example. It depends on whether it's consistent with your high-level competitive strategy. It depends on, I don't know, I'd say a wide variety of things that make it closely related to business value, let's say, but not exactly the same thing. There are cases of companies who said, our strategy is to lose the least profitable 10% of our customers, right? How do you lose the least profitable 10% of your customers? You try to destroy value for them, really, and that's going to contribute business value. It's a little peculiar to think about it that way.
Growth via attrition.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or profitability by attrition, anyway.
Sure.
Not exactly growth. When you consider the range of different business organizations, you realize that a metric is not going to do it. That's easy to abandon quickly if you consider the fact that we have a very small number of public companies, publicly traded companies. We have a huge number of closely held private companies where really what's valued by the company is whatever is valued by the owners. They can decide, they own the company, they can decide what they value. Not all of them want to maximize profits, for example. There are nonprofits, there are government agencies, and all of these things are a huge part of the economy. And there is not going to be a formula. Let's say the Department of Homeland Security wants to prevent terrorist attacks. So what formula are you going to make up that works for them and also works for Walmart?
Dissimilar. One would
Rather
think.
dissimilar,
Yeah.
right? And dissimilar about how they think about business value or how they need to think about business value. So then if you think about the poor product owner who's trying to decide how to prioritize requirements and what requirements to do, and somebody's telling him, well, calculate ROI for the different choices. Well, number one, is ROI the right metric? Maybe, maybe not, depending on the situation. Usually not, as I explain in the book. What assumptions do they have to make to calculate ROI? Where are they getting those assumptions from them? How much sensitivity is in those assumptions? There are all these ideas sort of buried in our Agile practice that when you start questioning them, you realize that maybe this isn't the right way to organize your requirements. Maybe it's not good to dump all the responsibility on a product owner for deciding how to create value or what value is for the business. And I think it really changes a lot in how we should be practicing our craft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a fascinating concept. And again, we're here at the DevOps Enterprise Summit, right? So how do you see, clearly DevOps is evolving. We've seen a lot more talk about the evolution of culture, about how tooling relates to that. Now we've had some great conversations around security is being pulled closer in finally, something we've always talked about. But how do you see this translating in terms of, the vision around delivering business value? I almost say customer value, business value through DevOps.
Well, there are a couple of different ways I think we can look at it. One is DevOps is a lot about leaning out or streamlining a process of getting software to production, right? And it's hard to argue with that goal. You know, that's going to be a part of maximizing business value one way or another.
Hopefully.
You still always have that question of what exactly is the team doing? We can set up a process where they can do it very effectively and very quickly, but how do you decide what they should be working on? And I think my answer is very consistent with the DevOps philosophy and way of thinking about things, which is that the team can have a lot of autonomy as a whole in deciding questions of business value. So I think historically we've gone down this path where we say there's a product owner drawn from the business who makes all the value decisions. And to me, that's a little bit like taking the waterfall approach and shrinking it down to a team size, where the business decides on the requirements, tosses them over the wall to the developers to implement. Here we have a team, and the product owner decides what needs to be done and tosses it over the wall to the technical people.
And there's a loop from ops coming back to inform that business case, right?
Yeah, but if that loop goes back to the product owner, then you still have this case where it's the business side of things informing itself, and then telling the technical people what to work on, essentially.
Sure.
And I'm not sure that's really consistent with the Agile spirit or the DevOps spirit. I think really what we want to do is empower a team to create value, not empower a product owner to create value, and the team creates product to help that person. So if the team is going to participate in value creation as a team, with cross-functional skill sets and so on, they have to have a pretty good understanding of what business value means and how to think about it. And in a way, that's why I wrote the book, because DevOps is, until now, I think has been missing the discourse on this question, of how do we decide what to work on in a way that's consistent with the DevOps approach.
So metrics and measurement, we've talked about this a little bit already, and the difficulty, right? How do you see the people who are doing this right, who are getting this element of it all right?
Yeah.
An important one of the elements, right?
Right.
How are they measuring? What is a metric that you can cite?
Right. So I'm not arguing that we shouldn't have metrics or that the metrics aren't important. What I'm trying to say is there isn't a single metric that we can call business value. That it's going to depend on the approach of leadership of the organization, their theories or hypotheses about what is best going to accomplish the goals of the organization. Mm-hmm. And in that context, leadership and middle management should always be finding the metrics that encourage the creation of value.
Sure, but
Right.
is there an example that you can provide?
Absolutely. So, for example, company, this is a somewhat fictional situation. Let's say a company processes applications, maybe it's an insurance company or something. They process applications from customers, and they realize the application processing isn't going fast enough, and so they're losing customers because it takes them too long to process an application.
Sure.
So they might decide that it's going to create business value if they can speed up the number of applications that can be processed per day per person, or the total number of applications they can process. So a metric would be, for each processor, how many applications can they do each day? And the hypothesis of leadership is that that will lead to better profitability or better shareholder value. That is not something we know for certain, following the ideas in the lean startup, really. This is a hypothesis and needs to be tested. And it can serve as a provisional definition of what leadership thinks will create business value. That metric is the important one for now. And then we can empower a team saying, your job is to increase the number of applications that can be processed per day. I don't care about requirements per se. Your job is just make that metric move. You can figure out what the requirements should be. I've put together your team such that you have business experience and expertise in the particular position of the company in the industry you're in and how it competes and so on. So as a team, including a full stack of skills, including business skills, you can figure out what requirements are likely to get me the outcome that I want, and then we can change course as you discover whether it does or doesn't. Does that make sense? That's
Absolutely, yeah.
metric, but
Fascinating stuff.
a different way to think about the metric.
So before we close up, I understand you've got another book on the way. So now I'm guessing, is this going to be the art of war of business value, Sun Tzu type thing? Or?
It's not exactly, no.
Okay.
I think I stumbled on another problematic area after business value. So if I'm a CIO, and I think about where we're heading with agility and DevOps, and I know that our principle is we want empowered autonomous teams working directly with the business to create business value. And I think, where does that leave me as a CIO? You know, what am I supposed to do? They're working directly with the business. I thought I was in charge of creating business value through
Just
technology.
play golf or
right?
something, yeah.
Play golf, and you could have metrics around that, maybe. But I think there's this problem of how do we rethink what IT leadership is when we're being agile? You know, what really is the job of leadership? How should it approach its role? How should we think about the same sorts of concepts that CIOs have always thought about, like governance and security and requirement elicitation and those sorts of things in an agile context? So the book is going to be about IT leadership in the age of agility, so to speak.
Neat. Well, we'll look for that. I won't say next year. Hopefully, you'll be back next year to speak. I won't promise that you'll. It sometimes takes a while to work through the entire manuscript, but you can pick up The Art of Business on Amazon.com.
That's right.
We're joined by Mark Schwartz, CIO and author. Again, I'm Matt Hines with DevOps TV for DevOps.com at the Does 16 conference. Thanks for joining us.